The story began in a small rented room where a young woman named Aisha lived alone. Her life was full of struggles that most people could not imagine. She was the eldest daughter in her family, and from a very young age she had learned the meaning of sacrifice. Her parents lived in a village with her younger siblings, depending on her for both hope and survival. Every morning, before the sun even rose properly, Aisha would wake up, cook something simple, and get ready for her classes. She was studying at a respected university, but getting there had been far from easy. Her father had worked as a daily wage laborer all his life, and her mother often sewed clothes for neighbors to earn extra money. Even after all their efforts, the money was never enough. Aisha had always been intelligent, hardworking, and full of dreams. She wanted to become someone who could not only change her own destiny, but also bring comfort to her family. Education was her key, and she clung to it with all her strength. But reality often crushed her spirit. Her classmates arrived at university in shiny cars, wearing branded clothes and carrying expensive gadgets. She, on the other hand, wore the same few dresses again and again, carefully washed and ironed, so no one could notice how limited her wardrobe was. Many times she sat in class with an empty stomach, because she had saved the little money she had for bus fare. On days when she could not afford even that, she walked long distances, sweating under the sun but still smiling as if nothing was wrong. At night, after her classes, she worked at a cafe near the campus. Her job was to clean tables, serve tea, and sometimes manage the cash counter. The pay was small, but it kept her going. She often returned to her room late at night, exhausted but still determined to study before sleeping. Her small room had a wooden chair, a simple bed, and a pile of secondhand books she had collected over time. She read them again and again, highlighting important parts and writing notes in the margins because she couldn't afford new ones. Despite her struggles, Aisha never gave up her kindness. Whenever she saw another student struggling, she offered help with studies. She was soft-spoken, respectful, and carried herself with dignity. Many noticed her, but she never allowed anyone to feel her pain. She believed that her difficulties were her own battle, and one day she would rise above them. Her friends sometimes invited her to join outings, but she politely declined, knowing she couldn't afford it. Deep inside, she wished she could enjoy a carefree youth like others, but her responsibilities tied her down. On weekends, instead of resting, she worked extra shifts to send money home. She thought of her younger brother's school fees, her sister's needs, and her mother's health. Those thoughts kept her awake at night, yet they also gave her strength to keep going. One evening, as she was sitting alone in her room with a candle burning, because she couldn't pay the electricity bill, she held a photo of her family. Her father's face looked tired, her mother's smile was fading, and her siblings' eyes were filled with hope. Tears rolled down her cheeks, but she wiped them quickly and whispered, "I will make life better for all of you." Just a little more patience. Her determination was her only wealth. Teachers admired her intelligence, often praising her in class, saying she could achieve great things. Some classmates looked at her with admiration, others with jealousy, but Aisha kept her focus on her studies. Every exam was like a battlefield for her, and every good grade was a small victory. Still, life tested her again and again. Once, her landlord threatened to throw her out if she didn't pay the rent. Another time, she fell sick, but had no money for medicine, so she endured the fever and still went to class. Each challenge left scars, but also made her stronger. She told herself that suffering today would lead to peace tomorrow. There were moments when she doubted herself. Sitting alone in the dark, she sometimes wondered if her dreams were too big for someone like her. Maybe I should quit and find a permanent job, she thought. But then she remembered her little sister's words on the phone. "Appa, when I grow up, I want to be like you." That single sentence was enough to light her spirit again. Life in the city was not just about money struggles. Aisha also faced judgment from people who didn't understand her choices. Some mocked her for being too serious, others for being poor. Yet she walked with her head high, reminding herself that dignity was not bought with wealth. Her mother's voice always echoed in her heart. "Stay honest, my child. Stay strong. One day your hard work will shine." Though she never admitted it to anyone, there was a loneliness inside her. She saw couples laughing together on campus, friends eating at restaurants, groups going on trips. She wished she could be a part of that joy, but her circumstances never allowed it. Still, she dreamed of a day when she would walk proudly into a restaurant with her family and say, "Eat whatever you like." That dream kept her heart alive. Every night, when she prayed before sleeping, she asked not for wealth or luxury, but only for enough strength to keep going. She believed destiny had written something for her, something greater than she could see right now. She just had to survive the present storms. In this quiet struggle of hers, fate was silently preparing something unexpected, something that would completely change her life. But for now, Aisha only knew one thing. She was poor, she was tired, but she would never give up. Her story had just begun, and the world was about to witness how a poor student could step into a life beyond her wildest imagination. Aisha's life continued with the same rhythm: studies during the day, work in the evening, and books at night. She had accepted her struggles as part of her destiny. But life often surprises people when they least expect it. One such surprise was waiting for her, hidden in an ordinary evening at the cafe where she worked. The cafe was usually filled with students and office workers. Aisha had grown used to the noise of chatter, the clinking of cups, and the smell of freshly brewed tea. She moved from table to table, quietly doing her job. That night, however, a man walked in who immediately caught everyone's attention. He was not like the usual customers. His hair was gray, his clothes were simple but carried the kind of elegance that only the wealthy could manage. His presence was calm, and though he was much older than the rest of the people in the cafe, there was something dignified about the way he carried himself. He sat at a corner table, opened a newspaper, and ordered only a cup of black tea. Aisha brought it to him with her usual politeness. "Here's your tea, sir," she said softly, placing it on the table. He looked up at her, and for a moment his eyes lingered on her face. There was no judgment in his gaze, only curiosity and warmth. "Thank you," he replied with a gentle smile. Over the next few days, he became a regular visitor. He always sat at the same table, sometimes reading, sometimes just observing people. Unlike others, he never seemed in a hurry. He noticed how Aisha worked tirelessly, never complaining, always respectful. He also noticed the weariness in her eyes and the way she tried to hide her tiredness behind a polite smile. One evening, as she cleared the table next to him, he asked casually, "Are you a student?" She looked a little surprised but nodded. "Yes, I am studying at the university," he continued. "And after classes you work here?" Aisha hesitated for a moment, then answered honestly, "Yes, I have to." The man nodded thoughtfully, as if he already understood more than she had said. Over time, their small conversations grew. He learned about her passion for studies, her dream to support her family, and the difficulties she faced. She learned very little about him, only that his name was Ibrahim and that he had once been deeply involved in business. He never spoke much about himself, but there was a depth in his words that made her feel he carried a lifetime of experiences. One night, when the cafe was nearly empty, Ibrahim said something that startled her. "You remind me of my younger self," he said. She looked at him confused. "But you are so successful. How could I remind you of that?" He smiled faintly. "Success does not erase the memory of struggles. I too have seen days when I had nothing." Aisha found herself strangely comforted by his words. She had grown so used to being invisible that kindness felt unfamiliar. Still, she remained cautious. The world had taught her not to trust easily. Weeks passed and their bond became more visible. People at the cafe began whispering, wondering why such an elderly, wealthy man took interest in a poor student. Aisha ignored their gossip and continued with her work, though inside she was puzzled. Why did this man who could dine in the most luxurious places choose a small cafe? Why did he talk to her when he could have ignored her completely? The answer came one evening when Ibrahim asked if she could spare some time after her shift. She hesitated but agreed. They sat outside on a bench near the cafe. The night was quiet, the streetlights glowing softly. Ibrahim looked at her and said in a serious tone, "Aisha, I have something important to ask." Her heart raced. She thought he might offer her a job or some financial help. Instead, his words left her speechless. "I want to marry you." Aisha froze. She stared at him, unsure if she had heard correctly. Marriage to him? Her mind filled with questions. He was far older, a man who had already lived most of his life while she was just starting hers. "Sir, I don't understand," she whispered. Ibrahim spoke calmly, as if he had thought about it for a long time. "I know it sounds unusual, but I have everything in life except true companionship. You are honest, hardworking, and kind. I see in you the qualities I value most. I do not want to waste time on empty relationships. I want someone genuine by my side. That person is you. Aisha felt dizzy. She thought of her parents, her siblings, her poverty. She thought of the whispers of society, the endless judgment that would follow. Was this a mistake? Or was it fate giving her an opportunity she had never imagined? She tried to speak. But people will laugh. They will say I married you for money. Ibrahim's eyes softened. Let them say what they want. Truth is not decided by gossip. Only you and I will know the reason. That night, Aisha lay awake in her small room, her mind in turmoil. She imagined the relief of not worrying about rent, food, or her family's needs. She imagined finishing her education without fear of dropping out. She imagined her siblings smiling, her parents finally resting. Yet the thought of marrying someone so much older frightened her. Was it right to make such a choice for survival? The next day she prayed long and hard, asking for guidance. Her heart felt heavy, but somewhere inside she felt this proposal was not a trap but a chance. When Ibrahim came again, she finally said, "If I agree, it is not because of your wealth. It is because I believe you are sincere. I only ask for respect and honesty." He nodded firmly. "That is all I wish to give." The marriage was simple. A small ceremony attended by only a few close people. Aisha wore a plain dress, and yet she looked radiant, her eyes filled with nervous hope. Ibrahim looked at her with pride, as though she was the most valuable gift life had given him. When the ceremony ended, Aisha stood quietly, trying to absorb the reality. Just days ago, she had been a poor student with unpaid bills. Now she was the wife of a billionaire. The change was so sudden that it felt unreal. The world outside whispered and judged. Some said she was clever. Others said she was foolish. But inside, Aisha only knew one thing. Her life had taken a turn she had never expected. Whether it was a blessing or a test, only time would tell. The first morning after her marriage, Aisha woke up in a place that felt more like a dream than reality. She had never seen such comfort before. The room was larger than her entire rented house, with tall windows covered in silk curtains that let in soft golden light. The bed she had slept on was so comfortable that for a moment she forgot the countless nights she had spent tossing on her hard mattress. She looked around, still unsure if it was real. For years she had lived with the sound of leaking pipes, noisy streets, and the constant worry of paying rent. But now she opened her eyes to silence, a silence filled with peace. When she stepped out of the room, she found a long corridor decorated with paintings and flowers. Every corner of the mansion spoke of wealth, but it was not only wealth. It carried a sense of history and grace. At the breakfast table, Ibrahim sat waiting for her. He greeted her with the same gentle smile she had seen in the cafe. "Good morning, Aisha," he said kindly. She felt nervous sitting at a table filled with food she had only seen in magazines. Fruits, breads, cheese, tea, and dishes she could not even name were placed neatly. Out of habit, she took only a little, remembering how she had always tried to save food before. Ibrahim noticed her hesitation and said warmly, "This is your home now. Don't be shy." It felt strange for her to accept such comfort, but she slowly reminded herself that this was her new life. Yet deep inside, she promised she would never forget where she had come from. In the following days, Aisha was introduced to a new world. Expensive cars stood ready to take her anywhere she wanted. Clothes of the finest fabric were gifted to her, carefully chosen to suit her. Servants respected her, addressing her as Madam. For the first time in her life, she did not have to worry about unpaid bills or an empty stomach. But along with the luxuries came the whispers of people. Whenever she went out with Ibrahim, she noticed the stares. Some eyes were filled with curiosity, some with pity, and some with judgment. People wondered why a young student had married a man old enough to be her father. The gossip did not surprise her. She had expected it. Still, it hurt sometimes when strangers painted her love and respect as greed. Ibrahim, however, never let her feel small. Whenever he noticed her discomfort, he said, "Let people think what they want. Truth will always stay stronger than rumors." His calmness gave her courage. Slowly, Aisha began adjusting to her new life. At first, she felt out of place in the grand mansion. The walls were filled with portraits of Ibrahim's past, his business achievements, and memories of a life she knew little about. She often walked through the gardens where fountains sparkled under the sun and flowers bloomed in every color. She thought about her small room in the city, where she once lit candles to save on electricity. The difference between then and now was almost unbelievable. Still, she remained the same person inside. She did not let the wealth change her values. She continued her studies at the university, arriving now in a car with a driver. The same classmates who once ignored her now looked at her differently. Some tried to befriend her, others whispered behind her back. She smiled politely, but in her heart, she knew who had been genuine with her before. At home, Ibrahim encouraged her to focus on her education. "You must not stop chasing your dreams," he reminded her often. He admired her determination and said she should never let luxury take away her hunger for knowledge. His respect for her studies touched her deeply. She realized that though he was wealthy, he valued hard work and sincerity more than anything. Days passed and Aisha began noticing the smaller details about her husband. He lived with simplicity despite his riches. He preferred quiet evenings, reading books, or sitting in the garden. He never showed off his wealth or looked down on anyone. He treated every worker in the house with respect, and they in return adored him. Watching him, Aisha understood why life had given him so much success. Yet, even with comfort around her, Aisha sometimes felt a quiet emptiness. The age difference between her and Ibrahim showed itself in different ways. He spoke about experiences from decades ago, while she thought about dreams for the future. He often grew tired early while she still had energy to do more. At times she wondered if she could ever truly belong in his world. But then she remembered the kindness in his eyes, the sincerity in his words, and her doubts softened. One evening, Ibrahim surprised her by taking her to a charity event. The hall was filled with well-dressed people, businessmen and families of influence. Aisha felt nervous, afraid of making mistakes. But Ibrahim stayed close to her, introducing her with pride as his wife. People smiled politely, though she could sense the hidden curiosity in their eyes. Some admired her, some judged, but she remained composed. That night, when they returned home, Ibrahim said softly, "You did well, Aisha. You carried yourself with grace." His words meant more to her than all the jewels she had worn that evening. Despite the new world she was living in, Aisha never forgot her family. She called them often, sending money and gifts. Her parents could hardly believe their daughter had married into such wealth. They were happy, but also worried about how society might treat her. Aisha reassured them, saying, "Do not worry. He is a good man. He respects me." In her heart, she felt grateful. She knew her life had changed not just because of luck, but also because of her endurance through years of hardship. Still, sometimes, late at night, she asked herself quietly, "Why me? Why did he choose me out of all the people he could have had by his side?" The question lingered unanswered. 1 week into her marriage, life seemed almost too calm, too perfect. Every morning she woke to comfort. Every evening she felt secure, but she could sense that something remained hidden. Ibrahim carried a look in his eyes sometimes, as though he held a secret too heavy to share. He would sit silently in the garden, lost in thought, and when she asked, he would only smile and change the topic. Aisha did not press him. She thought perhaps it was memories of his past, perhaps loneliness from years before, but deep inside her heart whispered that her journey had not yet revealed its full story. Fate had given her more than she had ever dreamed of, but it also carried mysteries she had yet to uncover. And so, Aisha continued to live in her new world of wealth and luxury, walking carefully between gratitude and doubt. She had stepped into a life that seemed perfect on the outside, but in the silence of its grand halls, something was waiting, a truth that would soon shake her understanding of everything she believed about her marriage and the man she had trusted. It was a week into Aisha's new life when the world she had stepped into began to show shadows she had not yet noticed. The mansion, with its elegance and comfort, suddenly seemed filled with secrets. For the first time since her marriage, she felt a strange unease. She had always been observant, trained by years of struggle to notice the smallest details, and now her instincts told her that all was not as it seemed. The morning had begun like any other. Aisha woke to the soft sunlight streaming through the curtains, the smell of fresh tea from the kitchen, and the quiet murmur of the servants preparing the house. Ibrahim, as usual, was already in his study, reading documents or making notes. Aisha had grown used to his routine, but that day something felt different. When she entered the study to greet him, she noticed a folder left carelessly on the table, slightly open. Papers peeked out from it, revealing words she was not supposed to read, but curiosity, combined with her careful nature, drew her closer. For a long moment, she stood frozen, her heart racing. The papers contained information about business transactions, legal documents, and bank statements. Hundreds of millions of dollars moving through accounts she could not have imagined even existed. But that was not what startled her most. There was another set of papers, almost hidden, describing personal matters. The documents detailed Ibrahim's health in meticulous detail. He was terminally ill. The doctor's reports were precise, listing treatments, medications, and the expected duration of his remaining life. Aisha's hands trembled as she read further. She felt a whirlwind of emotions: shock, fear, confusion, and something that almost felt like betrayal. He had married her. He had welcomed her into his life, yet there was this secret he had kept from her. Why had he not told her? Was the marriage genuine? Or had it been a plan to secure someone by his side before his time ended? She put the papers back, trying to calm herself. For years she had fought battles she never wanted, had endured hunger and hardship, and now she faced a challenge far beyond anything she had imagined. Her mind raced through memories of their conversations, his kind gestures, his gentle smiles. Were they real? Or had they been shaped by his knowledge that he did not have much time left? Aisha spent the day trying to act normal, but her thoughts could not settle. She went about her routine, attending her studies and small meetings with Ibrahim, but inside a storm raged. Every word he spoke, every glance he gave her, seemed layered with a meaning she was only beginning to understand. She remembered how he had told her, "I only wish to give you honesty and respect." But was this honesty incomplete? Or was there a deeper lesson hidden in the secrecy? By evening, she decided she had to confront him. She could not continue living with unanswered questions. She found him in the garden, seated on the same bench where he had once asked her to marry him. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink, a peaceful evening contrasting with the turmoil in her heart. "Ibrahim," she began, her voice trembling. I found something." He looked at her quietly, his eyes calm yet deep, as if he had been expecting this moment. "You found out?" he said softly. There was no anger, no defensiveness, only the same gentleness that had drawn her to him. Aisha's voice broke as she spoke. "I found your medical reports. You are very ill. Why didn't you tell me? Why did you marry me knowing this?" She looked at him, searching for a trace of truth that would explain his silence. Ibrahim sighed, leaning back in his chair. "Aisha, I wanted to tell you, I truly did. But I needed to see you first to know who you really are. Many people have surrounded me, trying to get something from me. Money, fame, attention. But I wanted to know if someone could care for me genuinely, without expecting anything in return. That was you, and in you I saw honesty, courage, and kindness." Aisha felt a mixture of relief and confusion. Relief because he had not deceived her for selfish reasons. Confusion because the truth was far heavier than she had imagined. "You married me? To test me?" she whispered, almost unable to believe her ears. "I married you because I wanted companionship," Ibrahim explained gently. "I wanted someone to share the time I have left, someone who could see me as I am, not just as a billionaire or a name in the newspapers. You reminded me of what life should really mean." Her eyes filled with tears. She had always hoped to be respected for her own worth, but now she realized that her integrity and sincerity had truly mattered to someone. Yet the reality of his illness weighed heavily on her. She thought of the days to come, the possibility of losing him, and the challenges that awaited her if she stayed. Ibrahim continued, sensing her inner conflict. "I know this is difficult. I did not wish to burden you, but the truth had to come out eventually. You must decide what you want, not out of duty, but out of your heart." Aisha looked at him, trying to measure her feelings. She remembered how he had treated her with respect, never flaunted his wealth, and had encouraged her to pursue her studies. She remembered the kindness he had shown to her family, the gentle way he spoke about life, and the quiet strength he carried despite his illness. For the first time in her life, Aisha felt a clarity she had never known. She realized that life was not about wealth or comfort alone. It was about honesty, compassion, and the courage to face challenges together. She also understood that true love sometimes comes in forms that the heart might not expect, and that it is measured not by age or riches, but by sincerity and respect. I don't know what to say," she whispered. "I'm scared, but I also—" I want to stay. I want to be with you, to support you, and to learn from you if you will let me." Ibrahim smiled, a mix of relief and warmth in his eyes. "That is all I ever wanted to hear," he said. "You do not need to promise anything more than being yourself. Together we will face whatever comes with honesty and courage." That night, as Aisha returned to her room, she felt a strange peace. The revelation had been shocking, but it had also brought them closer. She understood now that wealth, power, and social status were secondary. The true bond between two people was built on respect, truth, and genuine care for one another. As she lay on her bed, she thought about the journey that had brought her here. From sleepless nights in a small room, struggling to pay rent and tuition, to living in a mansion, loved and respected by a man who had once been a stranger, she realized that life had unexpected ways of testing people, and that courage, honesty, and patience often led to unimaginable rewards. Yet, she also knew that the coming days would not be easy. The illness was a shadow over their lives and the future uncertain. But for the first time she felt ready to face it, not with fear but with understanding and determination. She had learned that life was never simple, and happiness often comes with challenges. In the quiet mansion, surrounded by comfort and yet touched by the fragility of life, Aisha understood a truth she had never known before. True love is not about perfection, but about standing by someone even when life is unpredictable. She had stepped into a world of wealth, but more importantly, she had stepped into a world where respect, honesty, and courage mattered more than anything else. The days after Aisha discovered Ibrahim's illness were filled with new emotions, challenges, and reflections. For the first time in her life, she realized that life could be beautiful yet fragile at the same time. Each morning she woke up in the mansion, she saw Ibrahim sitting quietly in the study or walking slowly through the garden. Despite his illness, he carried himself with dignity and calmness, a man who had faced life's storms and emerged strong. Aisha decided to adjust her life to theirs, to truly be a partner in every sense. She continued her studies but also spent more time at home, helping with household decisions and learning about the vast empire Ibrahim had built over decades. She realized that his life had been full of responsibilities, challenges, and loneliness. Though he had wealth, power, and recognition, he had often longed for someone who could see him as a person, not just as a billionaire. She had become that person. Each day she tried to balance her new role with her old dreams. There were moments when she felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on her shoulders. The mansion was large, full of employees, investments, and decisions that required careful attention. But she faced each challenge patiently. She had learned long ago that life was not about avoiding difficulty, but about confronting it with courage. Over time, Aisha and Ibrahim's relationship grew stronger. It was not the kind of love often described in fairy tales, filled with passion or constant excitement. It was deeper, built on respect, trust, and understanding. They shared quiet dinners, walked through the garden, and spoke about memories, hopes, and dreams. Aisha found herself opening up to him, sharing her past struggles, her fears, and her aspirations. Ibrahim listened patiently, never judging, always encouraging her. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Aisha reflected on how much her life had changed. Just a short time ago, she had worried about paying rent and tuition. Now she was living in luxury, married to a man she respected deeply, yet also facing a challenge that would test her courage and compassion like never before. She remembered the day she had first discovered his illness. At that moment, she had felt shocked and betrayed, but now she understood why he had chosen to keep it private. It was not deceit, it was protection. He had wanted to see her true self, to know if she could be genuine without being influenced by his wealth or status. She had passed that unspoken test. Aisha also realized that her choice to stay with him was not easy. There were doubts, fears, and moments of uncertainty. But she knew in her heart that love and commitment were not about comfort alone. They were about standing by someone even when the future was uncertain. She had faced hardships before, but this was different. This was about caring for someone who had given her a life she had never imagined. While knowing that time with him was limited, together, they made small but meaningful changes to the mansion and their daily lives. Aisha suggested supporting local charities, helping students who struggled like she had, and providing resources to families in need. Ibrahim embraced these ideas, happy to see her compassion and energy. She found joy in giving back, knowing that her experiences could help others. Their bond also grew through shared routines. Aisha would help him with medications, accompany him to doctor visits, and spend long hours simply talking. They laughed over small jokes, discussed books and articles, and sometimes sat in silence, holding hands and appreciating the presence of each other. Those quiet moments became the most precious parts of their day. Despite the looming reality of his illness, Ibrahim never made her feel pity or obligation. Instead, he encouraged her to follow her dreams, finish her studies, and live fully. "Your life should not pause for me," he said one afternoon as they walked through the garden. "I want you to grow, learn, and find happiness no matter what happens to me. That is the greatest gift you can give to yourself, and to me." Aisha reflected on these words often. She realized that love was not just about being together in joy, but also about supporting each other in truth, courage, and understanding. She had learned to see beyond wealth, power, and social expectations, focusing instead on the values that truly mattered: honesty, empathy, and resilience. As weeks passed, Aisha also became a source of inspiration for Ibrahim. He admired her patience, her ability to find hope in difficult times, and her unwavering determination. He had built an empire over decades, but now he realized that her presence and influence had brought a new meaning to his life, something no amount of money or achievement could provide. One evening, as they sat by the fireplace, Aisha spoke softly. "Ibrahim, I have seen so much in my life, struggles, poverty, and hardship. But since coming here, I have learned that true wealth is not in money, but in trust, love, and courage. I am grateful for you, for your trust, and for letting me be a part of your life." Ibrahim looked at her with a gentle smile, eyes filled with warmth. "Aisha, you have given me something I never expected: hope, companionship, and joy in my final years. You have shown me the value of sincerity, and that is worth more than anything I have achieved in life." They both knew the days ahead would not be easy. Ibrahim's health would decline and challenges would come. But they also knew that they had chosen honesty, respect, and love as the foundation of their relationship. That choice gave them strength and peace. Aisha continued her education, excelling in her studies, now free from the constant worry of financial struggles. She also took a greater role in managing Ibrahim's affairs, learning about business, philanthropy, and leadership. The mansion, once a symbol of wealth alone, became a place of purpose, kindness, and shared dreams. In her heart, Aisha knew that the future was uncertain. But she also knew that courage, love, and sincerity could make even the most difficult journey meaningful. She had stepped into a world she had never imagined, faced challenges that could have broken her, and chosen to stay, to grow, and to support someone she had learned to deeply respect and care for. Over time, the mansion was filled with laughter, small celebrations, and moments of quiet joy. Aisha's family, once worried, now felt pride and happiness seeing her strong and respected. Friends who had doubted her now admired her for her grace, wisdom, and courage. She had become more than a student or a wife. She had become a symbol of resilience, compassion, and integrity. As the sun set one evening, painting the sky in soft shades of gold, Aisha sat by the garden fountain, reflecting on the journey that had brought her here. She had walked through poverty, struggled for survival, faced fear and doubt, and yet had found a life filled with meaning, love, and purpose. She had learned that life could be unpredictable, that happiness could coexist with hardship, and that true wealth was measured not in money, but in the courage to face reality, the kindness to care for others, and the honesty to live fully. Aisha knew that the days ahead would test her even more. But she also knew that she had the strength to face whatever came, guided by the lessons of her past and the love she shared with Ibrahim. She had discovered that life's true value was in connection, trust, and the choices we make to stand by one another, no matter how uncertain the future. And in that quiet moment, surrounded by the beauty of the mansion and the life she had once only dreamed of, Aisha felt a deep sense of peace. She was no longer just a poor student. She was a woman who had embraced life's challenges, discovered love in its purest form, and found courage in the face of uncertainty. She knew that whatever happened next, she had grown stronger, wiser, and ready to face her destiny with hope, compassion, and unwavering strength.